Good afternoon. You might wonder if I'm talking about storytelling, why does the slide say sense of place? Well, after all, I am the director of photography for National Geographic Travel. So most of our stories revolve around telling the story of what a place is like. So this is a Jim Richardson picture. It's a really interesting place. Does anybody know where it is? Scotland? Close, but no. This is in Brittany. And this is why we deal with nonfiction photography at Traveler, because it's just unbelievable that somebody actually built that house there. I'm going to amplify. For me, it's all about telling sense of place. And so what I want to go through today is a couple stories, a city story and then a small town story. And when you end up with an assignment, how do you arrive in your rental car, and then what do you do? So that's what we're going to go through. But let's get a little bit more of sense of place. Who can tell me where Chris Rainier took this picture? Niagara Falls, yes. How do you know it's not Iguazu Falls? Because there's a little power plant up there in the little right-hand corner. So these sense of place pictures, we don't want to be too obvious about it, but a lot of times it really helps to think to ourselves, where am I? What is distinctive about this place? Who can tell me where I took this photograph? Toronto. The Space Needle is much wider at the top. But, and then for extra credit, anybody know why the propeller blades are bent? Because I took the picture with an iPhone. Dave Yoder shot this picture in, I'll let you be very broad, the British Isles. This was in Ireland, but it's very distinctive to the British Isles. Just a couple more of these. Yeah, who's going to miss that one? Krista Rosso did this picture in San Francisco, and the whole story, she kept calling me every day and saying, Dan, it's foggy. I can't even see the Golden Gate Bridge. But in this picture, I think the fog helps, because the fog is a wonderful thing about San Francisco. And it just really adds to the photo. Any guesses? Antarctica. Antarctica because of the black rocks. Now, there are many places in the world that could look like this, but it happens to be a Jim Richardson picture in Antarctica. This one is in Scotland. And the last one? Well, how do you know it's not Las Vegas? No, it's in Venice. It's in Venice. So for Traveler magazine, we like to show what the places look like, and we also like to include the people that make that place special. So when Cotton Colson and Cece Brimberg were doing a story for Traveler magazine about Sunday afternoon in Paris, and they went to the antique store, this is what they found. And my whole career at Traveler magazine, I've had to listen to people make comments about the photographs and say something like, that doesn't make me want to go there. And I hate that phrase. I say, what kind of reason is that to choose a photograph? And I think I've been lucky, and this picture to me is a proof of that. We ran this over the spread. It was almost a full two-page spread in the magazine, because if the story is about how everybody's relaxed and checked out from life on Sunday afternoon in Paris, then why not show a picture like this? And these ladies at their antique store. A lot of what we do at Traveler are stories on cities. And so Krista Rosso shot this picture in Durban, South Africa. And it's wonderful. You heard me talk yesterday, some of you, about I love when the pictures have more than one reason, 2 layers, 3 layers. This is a picture of local Durban people from South Africa in the foreground, the city in the background. Sometimes we just like to have a humorous picture. You know, when this picture came up, when I was editing the pictures, Cotton and Cece shot this picture, and we had just run a picture of this exact site in Berlin, and for the longest time I didn't want to use the picture, because, you know, the entire left half is really quite ordinary. It's just an empty, cement wall. But the more I looked at the picture, I just thought, I cannot believe the dog is looking through the crack in the fence. And then we used it for the opening spread of the picture. So, photo editing is about opinion, it's about studying, it's about learning a picture and thinking about the place. And does it show the place? Another trick that a lot of photographers like to utilize when they're photographing a city is there's usually famous landmarks in different cities. In Washington, D.C., it's the Lincoln Memorial or the Washington Monument. In Berlin, outside the Art Museum, there's this row of bronze young ladies' sculptures. And everybody comes to have their picture taken sitting there. And so it's a great way to start out when you're in a city. This is the kind of picture where, you know, as we travel around the world, it's too easy to just have our family stand in front of the scenic object and take a picture. And I love it when the photographer makes this picture that integrates the people visiting into the place. Catherine Carnot took advantage of this reflection to make a picture in Hanoi that was new and old at the same time. In the reflection of the Gucci store, you have this old opera house, which was very important throughout the history of the city. And then she's really struck by the modernization of Hanoi. And what better way than to put those two things into one picture? And in this is one of the most effective reflection pictures I think, you know, I've seen in a while. So I went in February to shoot a set of pictures of Austin, Texas. And so Austin, Texas is a very famous place. It's the capital, state capital of Texas. It's the music capital of the world. And we decided to make a video that would show how I photograph a city. So simply put, you make a list, you write about the things that are interesting there. In this case, there's a spring that has been turned into a swimming pool. It's about 100 years old. It's called Barton Springs. And well, this is the kind of thought process you go through. So as soon as I knew I was going to go to Austin, Texas, the first thing that jumped in my mind was, oh, well, I need to get a picture of those bats coming out from under the bridge at Congress Avenue. And then I looked up on the internet and I thought, oh no, I'm going to be there in February. The bats don't get there until May. That won't work. So I made a list of things: music, barbecue, Barton Springs. This is the kind of things I did. So let's just take a little break. We'll watch a little 3-minute video here. And this is how I photograph a city. Hi, I'm Westergren from National Geographic Travel. I'm here in Austin, the state capital of Texas and the music capital of America. They've got history, parks, music, of course, and great barbecue. I'm here to find and photograph things that are quintessentially Austin. Stuff like the Driscoll Hotel behind us. This would make a great photograph, but not at this time of day. We're going to come back later as daylight transitions into night when the street really starts to glow. Austin is often billed as the live music capital of America. So we're going to go into the Continental Club and listen to Mel Davis and the Blues Specialist. It's really dark in there. I'm going to have to set up a couple of strobes and see if we can't use flash to make it a little bit better. Let's go in and listen to some blues. I've got 2 strobes set up. I could do it with ambient light, but I'm afraid they'll be moving too much and we'll get too slow of a shutter speed. Camera's set on manual, and 30th of a second, f8. Everything's fine. So we're here this morning at Barton Springs in Zilker Park. It's this man-made swimming pool right in the middle of the city. We got here right before sunrise, so the beautiful pink color of the sky was reflected in the water. And I underexposed by 1 stop because I wanted to make sure that the silhouette was going to be nice, clean, and crisp. I also wanted to have that strong color. But when she lifted up her hands to adjust her goggles, everything came together. And click, there was the shot. One of the best ways to find interesting photo subjects is just to be friendly and meet people. We saw this guy walk by with a huge beard, and he said, you need to come to the beard contest sponsored by the Austin Facial Hair Club. So here we are. Let's go look at some crazy beards. I love taking pictures at a place like this because everybody's on display. They want you to take their picture. After you get a bunch of standard portraits that are looking straight into the camera, I like to just go try to get some grab shots. Some people call it street photography. It can be a more compelling picture. I needed a great scene-setting picture of Austin. So we came here to South Congress Street to look up the street and take a picture of the state capitol, the biggest state capitol in America. the weather forecast was for cloudy skies, so I knew that would be a problem. We just have white skies, but if we got here early enough, we'd get a beautiful blue sky. We just shot the picture during the transition from night to day. All the street lights were on. It worked out great, and we got this weatherproof picture. It didn't matter that the sun didn't come out today. We got a blue sky and wonderfully lit Capitol. You might learn a few things from this video. One, I really like to take pictures at twilight. It just is my go-to, and it really is a great way to make things look maybe better than they are, or things that are interesting looking. You can just help it out a lot. The other is that when photographing a city in particular, when photographing a story for the magazine, I've really learned to just be the most outgoing person I know. I would not have known about that beard contest if I hadn't just stopped a guy who was walking down the street and said, "Hey, I like your beard, can I take your picture?" And that's when he told me, he said, "Yeah, but you ain't seen nothing. You need to come Saturday afternoon and I'll show you some beards." And he was one of the judges at the contest. Who knew that was going to happen? So you have this list of what you're going to photograph, and you work your way through that list, and at every stop along the way, you have a conversation with those people. You tell them that you're doing a story on the city or whatever. You talk to them, and then you ask them what they like about their city. Where should you go have lunch? Where's their favorite music venue? And you let these people lead you from one step to the next. Now, it's one thing when you're in Austin, Texas. It's fairly easy. Austin's beautiful. You just have to have a list and work your way through that list. But if you're going to take pictures in Whitesburg, Kentucky, it's a little bit more difficult. So we purchased a story that a writer had written, and it became my job to illustrate this story. And so that's mostly what I'm going to go through this afternoon. I'm going to take you through 3 days in the life of a traveler story. So what the story was, this writer loved an internet radio station. It was called WMMT, the Voice of the Mountains. And everywhere he went in the world, his routine was to get to his hotel room, open up his laptop, cue up WMMT, and listen to music from the mountains of Kentucky. It didn't matter if he was in Bordeaux, if he was in Seattle, if he was in Asia. He always listened to this radio station. So after about 4 years, all of a sudden it occurred to him, I wonder what this place is like. And so he decided to take a trip to Whitesburg, Kentucky. So he wrote this really nice piece. We bought it. I needed pictures of it, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I went to Google Street View, and I went to Whitesburg, Kentucky. And I started, I don't know if anybody else uses Street View for scouting, but I use it all the time. And so I'm taking my virtual walk down the street, and here's, the 1970s greasy pizza parlor. And it's just, I just went into a complete funk. I thought, oh, who could I possibly burden with this story on this place in the middle of nowhere? So I went into the art director, Jerry Seeley, and I said, Jerry, this is not much of a place. It just doesn't look like much. I don't know what we're going to do there. I need to have some photographer who shoots in like tin type or something, or maybe some old color process. We need to try to juice it up a little bit. And then I turned around and I turned back to him and I said, I'm not trying to talk us out of doing a story. I mean, I went to graduate school in Athens, Ohio. I spent a lot of time in Appalachia. I love it. And I said, it's going to be a tough one. And so he stops and he looks straight at me and he says, sounds like you need to do it. So WMMT is a radio station based in a place called the Apple Shop. This is the Apple Shop. Beautiful, isn't it? Ah, man, what am I going to do? So the main DJ was a guy who called himself Wile Quixote. And so his name was Jim Webb, and I woke up and I started driving around, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just show up unannounced and see if Wile Quixote has something to say to me. So I stopped at his place, and this is the walled-in pond. Do we sense a theme here? And in the background, that RV is parked on the Henry David thoroughfare. And Jim was there, and he agreed to take me on a tour of his property. So we saw the leftover slide. We saw the sand pit, very important to Jim Webb. We saw the Museum for Obsolete Technology. Why was I doing this? Why did I waste 2 hours of my very precious 3 days letting him drive me around his property in his Jeep? Because I needed him to be my friend. I needed to get to know him so that I could make a picture that was truthful about who he was to this place. So he had moved these cabins that his ancestors had, and they had them on his property, and I'm trying just to find the right way to make his pictures. He was a mining organizer for strikes in the mine, and these were the signs left over from years ago. I'm just talking to him and taking his picture, and talking to him and taking his picture. A little side note for the camera geeks in the audience, I usually use a Rolleiflex camera, so most of this is shot on film. And I'm getting to know him, but I didn't really see the point of the story. You always have to think about it's Whitesburg, Kentucky, WMMT radio, music, place, Appalachia. How can you make a picture that fits into that? So I followed him to work, and I just quietly took pictures as he did his radio show. And I'm looking at the real obvious things. I mean, it says WMMT on the window there. What more could I ask for? Maybe that's what I need to take a picture of. Well, I don't know, that's just too simple. Let's back up a little bit. And I wanted to get a nice photograph of him. And all of a sudden, he turned to me like this and he said, well, this is my last day on the radio. I just retired. But all of a sudden, I love this portrait of him. I mean, before I was asking him to pose for me, and now he's talking to me. He's letting me in on his life, on his secret. And it worked out. As I left his office, I turned around and I saw his hat sitting on a turntable. So I just took a picture and away I went. At the end of this whole thing, I'll show you the 5 pictures that we actually ended up using to illustrate the story. So, okay, Wile E. Quixote, 1 picture. I got that nailed. What's next? Well, Whitesburg, Kentucky is set in the hollers right at the border of Virginia and Kentucky. And so early in the morning, I drove the road up Pine Mountain until I would hope that I could get some nice landscape picture. Many of us know that Appalachia, the landscape, is not what you would call grand. It's kind of very subtle. It's very nice. I was happy to see the fog sitting in the valley and the lit street down there, but I just was trying to try to make it work. It's got the curve in the road. There's a car coming up. You've got the mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains in the background. It's working out okay. The light got a little bit better, but it's just not happening. So the light came up higher, and the hills weren't beautiful anymore. They got quite bright. So that was my key to maybe go into the woods. If you can find open shade, maybe sometimes you can make a more beautiful picture. So I'm thinking about Appalachian mountains, curvy roads, forest, boring. Let's see, maybe if I put my rental car in the picture, yeah, that's the thing to do. Oh, what am I going to do now? So I stopped at a roadside map to read about John Fox Jr., the first novelist in America who wrote some incredible novel. And I glanced over at the map and I said, oh my goodness, what is that? And there's this rock outcropping. So I raced down into town and I go into the Cornerstone Cafe and I showed the picture of the postcard on the back of my camera to the owner of the cafe and I said, what is that? Oh, that's High Rock. Oh, High Rock, that's a nice place. Can I go there? She goes, yeah, well, it's at the end of Main Street. It's about 8 miles from here. Well, how am I supposed to get there? Oh, well, there's this guy, Chad. Chad is like the head of the, he works for the agriculture department. He's in charge of all the hiking trails, and he can get you up there. So it's early afternoon, and I called Chad up, and I just matter-of-factly said, oh, Chad, they tell me you know how to get to High Rock, and you'd probably like to take me up there. And he said, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And I said, well, I think the direction it's facing, it might be really nice at sunrise. So can you meet me at 5 tomorrow morning? And he said, well, yeah, I could, but, I think it's better sunset light. Let's go tonight. And so I made arrangements to meet with him at 5 o'clock. He was going to take me up there. We figured that the sunset would be, around 6 or 7. And so then I had the afternoon to kill, right? So I saw these signs for a trail that went to a waterfall. I wasn't terribly interested because a waterfall is a waterfall is a waterfall. I mean, sometimes they're really nice, but I always had to think about getting my pictures that showed the story of Whitesburg, Kentucky. But what was I going to do? You had to check it out, right? So I took a 5-mile round trip hike to the waterfall. And it was, not much of a waterfall. Okay, so then it gets close to 5 o'clock. It's 4:30, and I'm heading up Pine Mountain for our rendezvous point, and it starts to rain. And I mean, I'm talking the windshield wipers are not clearing the windshield. I can't see where I'm driving. I pulled over and I saw this gal standing there with an umbrella, and it was just hideous. So my cell phone rings, and I pull it out of my pocket, and it's Chad. And he says, so I guess we're not going. Well, I only have 3 days in Whitesburg, Kentucky. I just said to him, well, I have a really good feeling about this. I said, it's going to clear. It's going to clear. We got 2 hours. Why don't you come on up here and meet me? It'll be fine. So Chad and we started off for a hike. And as we went through the woods, through the rain, and we got to the overlook, what happened? The sun comes out. I could not have been happier. And he was great to show. He was so happy to be able to show this place that he loves, where he lives, with somebody else. And so I take a series of pictures. For those of you that heard me yesterday, this is the Inadvertent Red Shirt School of Photography. I did not ask him to wear a red shirt, but I wanted to show you this because my thinking in choosing the photo that we chose goes to this. I mean, he just did that, honestly. But when I saw the picture, I'm like, oh no, that's fake. And so I tried a little bit more, and as we're shooting the pictures, you might think this is the postcard picture, but then I chose this photograph. Because they're looking, they're contemplating, and even more importantly, I like this valley in the bottom. It's really brought into the picture. And another thing I did to this, you might notice that the pictures before were shot, these were shot with my digital camera, and when you get into a scene like this with a zoom lens, or what happens to me, is I go, oh wow, it all looks great, let's zoom out as far as we possibly can. And you see how far away it renders the background. And so when I knew I had the picture, then I pulled the rollie out of my camera bag. You can't change the lens on it. It's a normal point of view. But what happens is you just back up until you're all the way into the blackberry bush, cutting your arms. And because it's sort of a normal angle of view, you don't have the wide angle lens making the background so far away. So that's one of my favorite. I mean, I love to use that camera because I can't change the lens, I can't change anything, I can't even use a flash with it. It forces me to find a visual solution to my problem rather than some kind of equipment solution to my problem. Okay, so now we've shown Appalachian Hills. So then, we came down, it's early evening. I already told you I love twilight, so what's better than to go to the Highlands Mountain Fair? And so I love that point in time when the lights of human civilization, if you will, starts to match the light from the sky and everything glows and is beautiful. You saw that in the picture of the Driscoll Hotel in Austin. That's kind of my go-to thing if you have to photograph something that's like beige, And they had these wonderful goats and kids on rides. This picture goes to like a completely different thing. I wrote a blog post about this a while back, and it's like how to take photos of strangers. So I've told you about 2 different kind of things where I meet somebody, I ask them if they help me out, I help them out. It's a mutual relationship. This guy, I took one picture. Sometimes I just don't feel like talking to people, and at the county fair, I didn't feel like talking to anybody. And so I looked through my camera, and I took a picture, and he caught me in the act. And so then this is the second picture. And I think it's just wonderful. We never talked. I moved on. He waved. It was wonderful. And I think also I love pictures of people, so I'm not afraid to take pictures of people. I think most people feel that it flatters them. It's really unusual that somebody will tell me, oh, quit taking my picture, or give me your memory card, or. But anyway, he gave me a gift. which I accepted gladly. Then we had fried Twinkies and Oreos. So anyway, that's Whitesburg, Kentucky. Next, we need music. What are we going to do to get music? So I looked down over the town, and it's really quite an ordinary place. It's okay, but it could be a little better. But the other reason why there was so much interest in WMMT radio, because the music in this place is fantastic. So this is the, the Summit City Cocktail and Coffee Shop. And they had an open mic night for the National Geographic photographer who was coming to town. And so I went to this place, and Amelia, she set it all up. Truthfully, I planned my trip to be there on a Wednesday night because I knew they would have the open mic night. But when they told everybody I was coming, then the amount of the musicians came from all of the hollers into town. And so here we are in a wonderful music venue, amazing musicians. How are you going to take a good picture in this place? I challenge you. It's hideous. I'm trying everything I can. Could we take the pictures off the wall? I don't know. Maybe if I go behind the band and look forward, that's going to work. Or maybe if I move a little further away, it's really just not happening. Maybe if I just drink a little moonshine, it will get a little bit better. No, that didn't work either. But I met this guy, Kevin Brown. He was the guy who organized the thing. He was a young in his 20s. Ever since he was 14 years old, all he wanted to be was an old-time banjo player. And he was really good. And so when the whole event was over, I said to him, Kevin, I said, I need a picture that shows music. How can you help me shoot a picture that shows music? And he said, well, tomorrow I'm going up to Harlan County, and I've got to teach banjo to a group of third graders. And on the way, we're going to go past my friend George's house. And George has this cabin, and he just loves to have the musicians come around. He's the best banjo player in all of Kentucky. My friends and I will be there. Why don't we go see George, and we'll see what happens. And so we go down the road, and then we come to a low water bridge. And the next thing I know, they stop and they drive under the bridge. And then they decide to drive a quarter mile through the creek, not across the creek. They're using the creek as the road. And then we pull up into George's pasture. And I said, what, George doesn't have a bridge? And their response was, well, George, he don't much like people. So this is George on the right. And this is one of Kevin's friends. She's a fiddle player. And George showed us his porch. And what better on a porch than to have a little impromptu concert? And so these three young musicians, they sat down and started to play for me. So now I'm going to add a secondary lesson here. You see, this is a picture where I'm trying to show musicians and the holler in the same picture. Well, that's a problem here because they're backlit, right? So we could be Joe McNally and we could bring in our speed lights and, light everything up and make sure that it all matches. I choose a simpler solution. I make another picture, and I say you can have this picture or that picture. Your camera can't give you both. How can you get what's in between? Well, go at a 90-degree angle to the scene, and you can start to get the side light. And so now it's just a matter of me moving around the porch, taking pictures of them, just trying to get just the right thing. Once again, you see here what I've done. I'm not always this successful with the Rolleiflex, but in this particular story, it worked really well. Because with a wide-angle lens, I'm likely to just include the whole thing. And when I have another lens, I'm more likely to move in and try and make what to me is a more interesting composition. A picture of what's the essence of this shot. But I always refer to this activity as dancing around the teacup. So you've got a photo situation, and it's your job to just take a picture of it from every angle. Back in the days of film, most of us would consider if it was worth a picture, it was worth at least one roll of film. You would never leave before you shot a whole roll because you never really could quite work that out. There's one photographer that I know, and he's in the room, Michael Melford, who doesn't have to do this because he just does it all in his head. It blows my mind. Right, Michael? He knows how he does it. And so he just always gets the right picture. But I'm not Michael, so I have to take a picture from every possible angle. And now I'm starting to feel that I love, so what I've decided in taking these pictures is that I love the side light. I'm perfectly happy with the background being slightly bright. We can see just enough. I've actually given up on showing down the holler because I already had a picture of that, didn't I? In the other situation. I don't need that anymore. So I can just make this picture about the musicians. And they're sitting here and they're singing these old time songs and playing the music. And then he looks down at his fingers. And then to me, that was the picture. I was really torn going back and forth between these two pictures because I hate it when elements of the picture intrude on each other so you can see the way that each of them has their own distinct space in the photograph. And I could be really bummed out that the guy leaned forward and he covered the gal up in the background. But then I realized that this picture had this emotional connection between the instrument and the individual. And then ultimately, that's what I ended up going with. And then, of course, I figured the perfect picture was going to be him putting his instrument away, which it didn't really work out that way, but here was the pictures. So, what did we use in the magazine? This was the lead picture of the story. Big as the whole magazine. I almost had a heart attack when I walked into the designer's office and I looked at her computer and she had this thing just as big as could possibly be. And I thought, what? All that work for me to get like the perfect picture of Kentucky? And you're going to put a stupid record player on the opening of the picture? And then I walked away from her office and I started to realize, like, she's right. This is what the story's about. It's about a radio station. It's about a place where time has forgot. About a wonderful place to go get away and be away, revel in what's old. We did use this picture. We used it very small in the frame. We used the picture of Wile E. Quixote telling me that he just retired from the radio station. And then we ran this shot of the young kids playing their music. So the next generation moving on to the mountain music. So that's what I go through in order to shoot a story, for the magazine, is constantly thinking, what's next? How can I get there? Who can I meet that will help me get there? And you heard me say this yesterday too, that I'm naturally kind of a shy person, but you put a camera in my hands and I just am the most curious person in the room. Thanks for spending an hour with me. I hope you learned something.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.